I'm very familiar with the brand, the Revenue Collective. So you are a founding member of the group. So can you tell me a bit more about them and why you think it could be valuable for some people?
Yeah. I mean, I think this comes back to one of the fundamental challenges of leadership in general, which is that it's a very lonely pursuit, because, you know, the further up the chain you go, the less peers or fewer peers you have to interact with or to talk to about what you're experiencing or to share the burden with, essentially. Because part of the reason people in, you know, C-level roles are paid what they're paid is because it's very, very tough and very, very lonely, and there aren't that many people who can commiserate or even understand what it is that you're going through. You know, as great as the perks of those positions are, there's also lots of challenges. Now, for the Revenue Collective, basically it was started by a friend of mine, a guy called Sam Jacobs, who's a multi-time CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, based in New York City. And one of the things that Sam observed about those kind of sales leadership type roles, whether they're VPs of sales, Chief Revenue Officers, Chief Sales Officers, is that, you know, as a venture capital funded company, it's very unlikely that the CEO or founder of the company is going to be jettisoned by the investors simply because, you know, they have the privileged position of never, you know, the VCs never wanting to be perceived to move against somebody they've invested in. At the same time, you know, the chief revenue officer or the head of sales typically is a much more, let's say, fragile, but perceived to be a more dispensable position and treated as such. And so I think the average tenure of a VP of sales these days is probably under 2 years, which is kind of demoralizing. And so part of why the Revenue Collective came about was this idea to give a forum and a community for people in VP level and above revenue related roles, whether it's marketing, account management, direct sales, to share knowledge with each other, share information, whether it's about salaries, whether it's about opportunities, whether it's about negotiation, whether it's about compensation plans and, you know, pipeline planning and all that kind of stuff. And the way that it was originally conceived was that there would never be more than one person from one company in the group. We've made some changes around that recently, but the idea was that, you know, in your office environment as an emerging VP of sales or a first-time CRO, you might have questions that you really need to know the answer to do your job really effectively, and you can't ask anybody else in the company because you're the one who's expected to know that. And it's really helpful to have a hive of a community of people around you who've been through that and are able to kind of share knowledge and so forth. I just found it to be a tremendously enriching community, full of incredibly smart and kind, giving people who, if you hit up asking for a favor, will inevitably, you know, do whatever they can to make that happen. And then, you know, it's on me to reciprocate. And, you know, numerous benefits that I could go on forever listing, but essentially it's the closest thing that CROs have to a trade union. So we'll see it like that.
And so I'm sure there'll probably be a lot of people who are individual contributors or VPs of sales in like SaaS businesses who may want to get involved with the Revenue Collective. How do they actually do that?
Yeah, so you can go to the revenuecollective.com, I believe, and there's an application process. You'll be interviewed by leaders from the Revenue Collective organization itself, and then you will be notified if you've been accepted based on your level of seniority, based on your interview process and so forth. And there's also the associate program, which is for up and coming revenue leaders who maybe aren't at that VP and above level position, but show tremendous promise and interest in being part of this community. And that's something that Sam's been working really hard to develop of late. So, you know, the first suggestion would be to find somebody who is part of the Revenue Collective, you know, reach out to them and express an interest, and then they can connect you with the right people and give you some insight into what it entails.
Exciting.